A strange phenomenon has emerged from the COVID debacle, and that is how control over the population was achieved and maintained. Superficially, it looks like people are still being corralled using the narrative of, "Do this or you'll die." But that is not why they continue to comply. And I can prove it. Despite the aspirational folklore, everyone identifying as the plucky hero in the movies, or believing they would be in the French Resistance rather than the actually much more numerous collaborators. The perpetual reality is that the vast majority of a population does simply comply with repressive laws. In the past they were repressed to protect them from the supposed threat of outsiders. And in this case to supposedly protect them from COVID. But that is in spite of COVID still having a lower global fatality rate than smoking or diabetes. No one is terrified of passive smoking, but COVID actually has a global death rate that is comparable to passive smoking. Diabetes kills at least 4 million people a year, at least 2 million under the age of 60. As of the date of this video, 3.5 million total died with COVID in the 18 months since December 2019. Which is an inflated and confounded figure, but we'll let that go. Which puts COVID on the scariness scale somewhere between passive smoking and eating sugary food. So, rationally, it cannot be fear of COVID that is the driving motivator for the herding of humanity into subservience. The actual mechanism, the trick that no one was really prepared for, was the illogical extension of social responsibility. Under this new framework you are portrayed as responsible for all consequences. Both from deliberate actions you may take, and also from the consequences of you existing. But this is a logical fallacy and the people enforcing this do not believe in it either. You are not, and cannot be held responsible for accidentally transmitting a virus. Why not? Several reasons really, not least that it is an aspect of human agency that is an uncontrollable consequence of existing in a society. But the primary and indisputable reason is it fails the symmetry test. The rules are applied differently to different participants under the same circumstances. Consider this. Healthcare services are provably responsible for the majority of COVID infections. But not one was sued, punished or placed under a requirement to stop their activity to save lives. The general public were. But they were not. So, at the same time you are being bullied into feeling guilty over the possibility that you might infect someone with a disease that is massively less fatal than diabetes. The actual primary vector of transmission is universally excluded from legal recourse or scrutiny. I'm calling out the hypocrisy. This is actually a version of a coercive pattern you might already recognize. Where else has the mantra of consequence and guilt without agency been propagated? What has become known as woke ideology has to date used this as the bedrock of its thesis, the notion that you are responsible because we say you are, not because you are, and definitely not because you could do anything about it. We are controlled because we allow it. We as good people, wanted to do good, and that goodwill was exploited. We lost our courage, and became so afraid of being wrong that we surrendered our agency. But it is, and always was, a trick. It was a way to get you to feel responsible for aspects of existence you were not in control of and had no real way of influencing. The care services were the primary route of infection. Even if the general public had all lived on separate planets, the nosocomial rate would have ensured that the majority of severe COVID cases would have still occurred. COVID is real, but it is massively overstated. Put into context, and even using the dubious definition of dead with COVID, rather than dead because of COVID. It is somewhere between the global risk of passive smoking and diabetes. Worth remembering. Be kind to each other. FTS.